Hello everyone. So in this video I want to talk a little bit about one of the most beautiful and unique and creative and collaborative human group experiences, which is of course the Capoeira circle, yeah, which is the whole point of practicing this art form, or let's say this is the where everything, all the training leads in the end into creating the circle together, holding the circle, and using the circle to develop ourselves. And the circle is so unique because it's a collaborative exercise that enables personal expression, which is one of the biggest challenges society has today. How do we work together and still enable personal expression and personal uniqueness and personal growth? So there's many kinds of Rodas and they're so beautiful. And sometimes there's three bows and sometimes one bow, and sometimes the atabaki is on the right and sometimes on the left. These are all different ways and forms that different lineages figured out how to create the energy, the vibration, the ashe that they like. Okay, and these things are constantly changing and moving, and if you've been around capoeira you've seen the trends, and it's beautiful as people change their consciousness. The kinds of songs they singing are changed, the kind of rhythms they're playing, even the tuning of the berimbau changes from time to time. Yeah, it started very low. If you hear the old recordings in the 50s and 60s, and slowly it went very, very high. If you hear the recordings of the 90s and 2000s, and now it's coming back down. So that's beautiful to see how people are expressing themselves. Of course, the Roda is a kind of continuation of many, many tribal rituals that came from Africa. And inside this melting pot of slavery, each person from different tribes, different backgrounds, different moralities uh, donated something into this circle that was forming in the senzalas. And out of that comes capoeira, comes samba, comes jongo, comes maculele, comes feijoada, comes everything that we love about Brazilian culture is a result of this expression of different African nations, of different indigenous tribes, of different European colonialists, and this a collective trauma of slavery. Okay, so that's where the circle is born. Obviously, it carries with it many, many echoes of Africa, but there's also echoes of Europe, and there's also echoes of the indigenous people of that area. What I really love about the Roda is the when you go to the villages still today in Bahia, like there's these famous Rodas, right? We all know the famous Rodas, these ones that have been holding resistance for many, many years in the different praças of Brazil, in Praça da República, Terreiro de Jesus in Salvador, Praça da Torre, like there's a few Rodas that have maintained a strong vibration for many, many years, and they're on YouTube. But what I want to talk about is actually all the small, small rodas that are happening in different little towns and villages, which I love as I drive through Brazil, especially in the Northeast. I love to sometimes stop in some towns and find the local capoeira group and see how the small circles, they're actually identical to the big circles in the big cities. They're doing the same service. Okay, so what kind of service did the old Roda provide the practitioners? First of all, it was almost like a social network. Yeah, that was where people got together to exchange news and ideas and network. That was the only place. So it was usually at the end of a work day or at the end of a work week or between the tides. So in Salvador, that was the main port of the Portuguese empire. All the goods that were going to Europe and coming from Europe were going through the port of Salvador. So in low tide, when the ships could not come in, all the people that were working, the dock workers, yeah, they had their capoeira circles. So it gave us networking, it gave us socialization, it gave us an ability to release pressures, okay, and not let things escalate. So there's all the time little conflicts between people, and rivalries, and how do you say, criticism and envy. So these things can be processed with a little bit of a dance, a fight, and a song, right? And many times we solve something in a little bit of a hard game, but then afterwards we're friends forever instead of letting it escalate. Okay, it served also as a platform to grow the generations, so the young, the children, the teens, the young adults, the elders. It gave this hierarchy, in the way the ritual used to undergo. Okay, they used to go. It gave the people an escape. It was an escape. It was entertainment. It gave the people some status. The capoeira masters that traditionally 100, 200 years ago came from the lower strata, okay, of the Brazilian society. It gave them status, and suddenly you see somebody that is the son of slaves playing with the Philharmonic Orchestra or shaking the hand of the president. So it was a bridge, for a social climbing. The Roda did all that since forever, since the Senzalas, and it's still doing that till this day. I remember in 1997 when I went for the first time to Brazil with my teacher and his today wife, but then girlfriend, and we did like the first tasting of Brazil, flying around all the capitals, visiting all the main schools of that time. And we went a little bit off the path, and we went to visit Trancoso. Trancoso is in the south of Bahia, not far from Raio da Ajuda, which back then was already popular. Raio da Ajuda was the main tourist attraction for the young travelers. But Trancoso back then was very, very, very small. It was only one street. There was barely any electricity. It was still very, very much a tribal feeling, a mix of a fishermen, of people who were still building, till this day with the big wood from the forest. So it was not easy access. Today already it's already very, very big, right? Trancoso is already very popularized. And now then Caraíva became the small one, and now probably there's a different small one. It always happens like this, yeah? Slowly as the tourists come, the people that are looking for the more natural experience, they go to the next um, unexplored place. Well, back then in 1997, Trancoso was the unexplored place. And the reason why we went to visit it is because my teacher's teacher, Mestre Daniel, Mestre Sapo from Israel, started capoeira in the Bay Area in San Francisco in the late 80s. That was when the scene started bubbling in San Francisco. And then he got married there to one of the capoeiristas, and they moved to Brazil, to Trancoso, to this place, and lived there for a few years. They had their first baby there, and they built a house. Mestre Daniel, the teacher, my teacher, was a craftsman, a woodworker. He was an artist. Capoeira was just a hobby for him. It wasn't his main thing. He was an artist. He worked with his hand. So they literally built a house in the middle of the jungle by themselves. So we went. Idan, my teacher, he wanted to show us that place, and we went there. And in this video, I just want to quickly tell you about the Roda that happened. So usually the villages in Brazil, they are built, of course, from the colonial times. It's one main street and like a cross, and then there is the Praça Principal, the main, and the main church. Anywhere you go in Brazil, maybe it's all South America, I guess. So the main street, the Praça Principal and the church. So even if it's a dirt road yet, and there's not even, back then it wasn't even paved, it was just grass and dirt, but still there was the old colonial church. And of course, in front of the church on Sunday afternoon, when the sun starts to set, that is the day usually of the Roda. Yeah, that is the festive day, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So I remember, we know that we heard on the beach already there's going to be a hot, blah, blah, blah. So of course we went, and being good foreigners and good Westerners, everybody said it's going to start like at 5 o'clock. So of course, like 4:45, we are already there dressed, and of course there is nobody there. Okay, and then 5:15, just a few kids start showing up, just in their bathing suits. They're coming from the beach, and they start doing some cartwheels on the grass and training some kicks. And then after maybe half an hour, some teenagers show up with one birimbau, like a bad birimbau, and like some pandero that's half broken, and they start to play for the small kids. So the small kids that were just spontaneously practicing suddenly make a circle, and it happening a very nice, cool roda for the kids. The teenagers are playing. And then slowly, suddenly, the young men of the village, the 20-year-olds, the 23, 25-year-olds, very gradually they start coming from the trails, from inside the forest, from the beach. They finish their day, and one by one, slowly, without stopping the music is always going. They take one instrument, and slowly it very happens organically, and suddenly it's the young man playing for the teenagers, and it's a little bit more exciting. It's calling more attention. Now the small children, they got their stage already. They're so happy. So they're standing there, they're clapping, and now they're looking at their idols. Their idols were just playing for them, and now they are clapping for their idols, which are the teenagers, right? Because everyone is looking up for the next generation. And then it's going, and some of these teenagers, and now the energy is good, so some of these young men are starting to stretch, and they're going to play with the teenagers a little bit, challenging them lightly and playing around with them and empowering them. Sometimes if there's a teenager that's going through, a little bit of a rebellious time, maybe he gets a little bit of a lesson in front of everybody, the law of the jungle. And then slowly, you don't notice it. It's very gradually. But by now, we are about 3 hours into the original ritual that started almost organically. So, since the first child did the first cartwheel until now, we're already like 3 hours, right? By now, it's dark. By now, the whole village is starting to gather in the main central plaza. Okay, the lights are turning on, the vendors are there selling popcorn and all that. Now it's already a scene, and slowly, one by one, the elders of the tribe, the older masters, they come, and now boom, they stop the ceremony, and now starts the real thing. So only about 4.5 hours into the whole thing, now starts what you would say the real Hoda, but it's not true, because it's an ongoing ritual, right? It's all important, all the stages, but now what we call the real Hoda is just the peak experience. So everything that happened until now was the peak experience, okay? And now the peak experience, everybody is satisfied already. The small children played capoeira, the teenagers played music for them. Then they clapped and sang for the teenagers. The teenagers are happy. They got to lead the ceremony for the smaller children, and the young men that are their idols led the ceremony for them. They're happy, they're there. Okay. Then the young man, right? The young man warmed up, and now the old elders of the tribe came to take the instrument and to create the strongest energy for the young men, because the capoeira, like the intensive capoeira, is like the young, I'm not only men, sorry, young men and women, but back then it was mostly men. Yeah, it was mostly men. There was one girl in a hoda. Today it's a lot more equilibrated, but back then in the uh, late 90s, early 2000s, the capoeira was very aggressive, very strong, and unfortunately, back then there was not a lot of space for the feminine, and that is exactly what happened over the last 30 years, a whole balancing in the other direction. So now it built in the energy, and now you feel it. The whole thing is vibrating. Now the old master, when he sings the ladainha, it's a message to the village. It's always something that has to do with the life of the village. He's sending some message to somebody, to a politician, to a mother that lost her son, to somebody. He is actually helping people process some kind of trauma through a message. Okay. And now people start to play, and the whole drama of that week, that chapter of Netflix happens. Some young people, they fight with each other and they hug. Some play beautifully. One guy is trying to impress to get the girls. The other, it happened. All the dramas of the village are reflected inside this circle and played out dramatically. Okay. And so that the life of the village can continue. So today I remember that amazing Roda, and I love that organic growth. I think it's very important to make a place for the children and for the teenagers and for the young adults and for the elders. And it's only when capoeira will learn that this is the right way, and it's the way it's always been. It's always been organically like that. Okay, that slowly, with patience, we create a ball of energy that leads to a peak experience where everybody is enjoying, okay? The elders get to empower with their knowledge, with their experience. They empower the next generation of elders. The young leaders of tomorrow are getting empowered because soon they're going to become the elders when the elders leave, and everything is progressing and hopefully in a positive direction.